Yes, the judge dealing with this case involving uh, a challenge in Baker County as to the governor of Oregon's abuse of powers, as it was alleged in our lawsuit, ruled in our favor and granted a preliminary injunction uh, suspending the governor's executive orders requiring shutdowns, not only of businesses but churches. Well, that shutdown order has been removed, has been eliminated by the judge with very solid grounds. It wasn't a personal perception or a subjective opinion. The judge looked at the law. He looked at the statutory law, uh, the limitation of 14 days that comes into play with regard to executive orders. And then he then applied that to uh, the Constitution as well, which requires the 3/5 vote from both houses of the legislature in the state of Oregon in order to affirm future orders and executive mandates like that. So we at the Pacific Justice Institute were very pleased. Needless to say, we understand that the governor and their taxpayer-funded legal team have decided that they're going to be appealing this or maybe filing a writ directly with the state Supreme Court. Most of those justices have already been appointed by this governor. We're hopeful that they will be able to step back from their politics, look at the law, and do their job appropriately. This case is very important because this was a classic example of a governor who has decided to allow her powers to go to her head and abuse those powers in a way that was an egregious violation of fundamental rights of individuals, not only of businesses to be able to engage in business operations, interstate travel perhaps, but also the First Amendment rights of churches and synagogues throughout the state of Oregon to be able to fully practice their faith, to fully exercise their faith and times of worship, as is guaranteed by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. This case was actually a building block from another important case that came out from the state of Wisconsin. The state Supreme Court in Wisconsin, in a 4-3 decision, held that that executive governor's order was also beyond the bounds of constitutionality, and therefore they struck down that executive order. We've also seen an exciting victory come out of Kentucky. That was actually in federal court, in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Was very strong in ruling on the merits of whether or not there's even a compelling state interest to justify unequal treatment of churches versus other institutions. In fact, that court made a very serious challenge to the governor of that state, in that they pointed out that there's other states that allow churches to meet freely, and yet there was no evidence shown at all by the governor's legal team of Kentucky that those states that allow for religious freedom and churches to meet have any greater risk or of any greater fatalities than those of states like, say, that we're dealing with, say, like in Kentucky, North Carolina, Federal District Court in North Carolina came down with something very similar. So we're seeing some very positive movements in the right direction. And we at Pacific Justice Institute are working hard to build from these cases as we move forward in some of the most hostile states in the country. Oregon is known as a very dark blue state, and dark blue states with Democrat governors have proven where they're coming from. And that is from a heavy-handed fist of control and dominance over the freedoms and liberties of individuals, families, businesses, and churches. We at Pacific Justice Institute were able to break through that iron fist of control, and we're hoping it sends a signal to other dark blue states that they can expect the same or something similar in the days ahead if they continue with their unconstitutional abuse of power. Oregon, relatively speaking, is much more unchurched than other states. So people of faith in churches were definitely in the minority. And so we were not only going against a political establishment, we're also dealing with a state where there wasn't nearly as much influence and political influence from churches, because they are definitely in the minority, and people of faith are definitely in the minority in the state of Oregon. You know, it's when infringements are the most important is when they're in the smallest minority, because they're the ones that need the greatest protection. We at Pacific Justice Institute are very privileged to have that opportunity to defend those who needed that representation and defense more than ever. And it was the people of faith in Oregon, along with business owners who also were having their rights infringed upon as well. Tremendous positive reaction from business owners, churches, people that have been watching this, not only in Oregon, but people outside of Oregon in states like California, Washington, Nevada, across the country, really. So it's been very positive, very encouraging. And the basic message we're getting from them is, why don't you do what you did in Oregon in our state as soon as possible? So we're very busy, of course, looking at it strategically, state by state. Make no mistake, though, we're going to work hard to make sure that these governors that have abused their powers so grotesquely, so blatantly, that these governors in these states are kept in check as quickly as possible and in the greatest possible way moving forward. If anyone needs assistance, if they feel that their liberties are being violated with regard to religious freedom or their rights as parents or families, they should not hesitate to contact us at Pacific Justice Institute. We're here to help.